Welcome to the Starter Girlz podcast, your ultimate source of inspiration and empowerment. We're here to help women succeed in every area of their lives: career, money, relationships, and health and well-being, while celebrating the remarkable journeys of individuals from all walks of life who've achieved amazing things. Whether you're looking to supercharge your career, build financial independence, nurture meaningful relationships, or enhance your overall well-being, the Starter Girlz podcast is here to guide you. Join us as we explore the journeys of those who dare to dream big and achieve greatness. I'm your host, Jennifer Loehding, and welcome to this episode. Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz podcast. Wherever you are tuning in today, we are so thrilled to have you. I'm your host, Jennifer Loehding. So my guest today is an expert in a unique niche that's reshaping how entrepreneurs and investors approach business ownership. So you're going to get to hear from him in just a few minutes. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him. But before we do that, we need to do a quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Walt Productions. Need to add excitement to your YouTube videos or some expert hands for editing? Look no further. Walt Mills is the solution you've been searching for. Walt is not only your go-to guy for spicing up content, he's the force behind a thriving film production company with numerous titles in the pipeline. Always on the lookout for raw talent, Walt is eager to collaborate on film and internet productions. With a background deeply rooted in entertainment and promotion, Walt Mills leverages years of skills to give you the spotlight you deserve. Want to learn more about Walt and his work? Head on over to waltmillsproductions.net and let your content shine. All right. And with that, I do want to make a mention to head on over to startergirlz.com. Make sure you know that that is a Z, not an S. Startergirlz.com. There you can keep up with all the latest episodes, blogs that are going out, know what's going on in the community, and just keep up with us. All right. So with that, I need to introduce my guest. So Jon Ostenson is a top 1% national franchise broker, investor, author, and international speaker, specializing in non-food franchising. As the CEO of FranBridge Consulting, he's helped thousands of entrepreneurs and investors explore franchise opportunities, drawing on his experience as a former president of an Inc. 500 franchise system and a multi-brand franchisee. Jon is uniquely equipped to educate others on franchising and franchise selection. He's also the author of the book on non-food franchising and a thought leader featured in top publications. So Jon, welcome to the show. So excited to have you here today.
Excited to be here, Jennifer. Look forward to jumping in.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this, because I know people here that do franchising and there's different kinds of ways to go into this. So I would love to know, tell us a little bit, this whole uniquely position. I want to know what this franchising is for you.
Like so many of your listeners, I spent many years in the corporate world and, helping others build their empires, and had that desire to build my own, but didn't know what it looked like, didn't know where to start, how to connect the dots. And, was very fortunate to kind of stumble into franchising and quickly realized that franchising is much more than fast food, which is oftentimes what comes to mind when you hear the F word, franchise. So long story short, I've had the opportunity to be a franchisor and support franchisees all across North America, as well as become a franchisee myself of a few different brands. I'm now in a stage where I get to spend most of my time helping others explore this world of business ownership, like you said, through franchising. And franchising is not right for everyone, but for the vast majority of those who are looking to get into business ownership, I just believe that the proposition that it provides, training wheels in a way, right? It's a much better path for most individuals.
Yeah, I know. And I've never been in that space, but I know people that do it. I know people that have run successful franchise. I met a gal the other day that I interviewed that went into the home healthcare space, and kind of crazy story. She went to be a nurse and somehow ended up in that. She sort of does the same thing, but it's just within that niche. So she's teaching people within that specific niche. But I sort of feel like it's different than what I did when I went into Mary Kay 20-something years ago. I'm not in that any longer, but when I started that, it was kind of like a business in a box for me. At that time, I liked that idea. I'm not equating that to franchise, but it's the whole idea of the mentorship and the assistance. That's what I loved about that space, because it was almost like I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. They had a brand, a following, they had sort of this idea, and I could come in and make mine. And then, of course, when I went on my own, it was like, hello, now I'm not in that box anymore. I've got to reinvent all this and make my own thing. So I could definitely see how franchising could be an attractive model for somebody looking to have something sort of established and have that mentorship and guidance.
Absolutely. To be cliche, you start on third base, right? A lot of the business model has been proven out in other markets. But it's so much more than the brand. Again, that's kind of where people's mind goes when you say franchise. Now, a
Right.
lot of these industries, the brand may not be recognizable. There are certain industries we just don't recognize the companies, but it's everything that goes into the support side. So having a team baked in on the sideline that's supporting you, that franchisor is kind of like a mentor or coach. You've got other franchisees that live in the same thing day in, day out, exchanging best practices. It creates a community. So you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And certainly there's supply chain efficiencies and marketing data that can be shared and other tangible benefits. But some of the intangible, like you said, the support side really goes a long way.
Yeah. And I like that you said you're in business for yourself, not by yourself. It's funny because I was talking about this the other day. I sort of sometimes kind of miss, I mean, I have a community here. We network a lot here in Dallas. I'm sure you guys do in Atlanta where you're at too. So we have a great community and support systems here, but it's still a little bit different, and I sometimes kind of miss that because when you're in that space where you have similar people doing similar things, you sort of have this like, you can, and not that you don't recognize other people outside of that community, but you sort of have that uniqueness and that sameness at the same time, when you have that community. And so sometimes I say I miss having the community of people that are doing the same thing that I'm doing, because now I have to talk to other people, and stuff. So I could see that being an important factor.
Heard a line the other day, if you're a business owner and you spend time with other business owners, the conversation's just different, right? I mean, the things you're talking about, they can understand and relate to you. You're going through the same things. I'm a member of the Entrepreneurs organization, so I get exposed to owners of a lot of different types of companies in different industries, and it's just so beneficial. And a lot of times you can innovate and bring some of their best practices into your industry. And it's interesting, Jennifer, a lot of those business owners approach me and say, hey, we'd love to get into franchising. Do you think it's a good idea? For some of them, they're too entrepreneurial. They want to put their thumbprints all over the business, and I have to explain to them, hey, you think you're the smartest guy in the room, no matter what room you're in, right? It's not going to be a good fit. But for so many others, like you said, they remember all that hard work and that went into their first rodeo. They don't want to have to do that again. They say, we'd much rather have a running start and be able to focus on execution rather than figuring out our technology stack and our marketing, go to lead generation strategies and everything else.
Yeah, marketing can be a beast. That's one of the areas I absolutely, for me personally, as an entrepreneur, I absolutely hate it. I'm building out a program right now and I'm at the tail end of it, right? And I was talking to someone the other day that's kind of does a little bit of similar work. And he's like, how are you going to market that? And I'm like, well, obviously I'm probably going to put it in my podcast somewhere. I mean, that seems like the most feasible way, but that's the thing you got to think about. And I'm like, beyond that, I have no idea, because I hate marketing. I like to just create and sell things, like I like to make things and I like to put things out in the world. But beyond that, no. So yes, I'm with you on that part of it. And that's what I loved being in what I was in before, is because the marketing was there. I didn't have to make that brand, or whatever. It was kind of already out there, so to speak. So would love to ask you, because we talk about like non-food, right? And that, when you said that in the very beginning, I'm thinking of like Chick-fil-A and like all these, food places that are franchisees. So what are some of the companies, like type of companies that you guys are working with?
It's such a wide variety. So we work with over 600 different franchises in industries outside of food. These are companies that are looking to grow. They still have good markets to expand into. We're constantly adding to that. So, it's industries like home and property services, everything from gutters to dumpsters, kind of the non-sexy stuff, but then you have a lot of design components. And there's some that I'm invested in, this custom pull-out shelving for your kitchens and your pantries, very non-salesy, consultative type approach. But our franchisees are just killing it there. Just so many different design type businesses, as well as paint, flooring, all your basics. But those are things people will continue to spend on. Industries like health and wellness, everything from, we just had a client recently purchase a business that has multiple recovery modalities under one roof. So everything from infrared sauna and red light to cold plunge and cryo and, everything in between. Certainly fitness is the component of that, but, testosterone replacement or hormone replacement, on the female side, we've got a great business coming out shortly that focuses on the hormone replacement side, which is top of everyone's minds these days.
Right.
Businesses around, I'd say kids, like youth soccer. We've had clients do incredibly well with youth soccer. We just had clients purchase trampoline parks in your backyard of Dallas. They're going big, purchase quite a few
Really
trampoline parks. Yeah, that was a big deal for them. They're former McDonald's franchisees, ironically, is making the transition from food. But the youth space could be STEM or what have you, tutoring, youth sports. the pet space, everything from grooming to boarding. Everyone's got a dog. We even have a
Yep.
pet cremation franchise, which,
Mm.
takes a special individual to be in there, but the margins in that business and it's a needed service. Certainly in-home health, like you mentioned, the senior space, I placed probably a dozen clients there last year. You know, that's a huge demographic but within the senior space, it's not just in-home health, the companion care, let's say, but it's
Okay.
also, we've had several clients in this past month that purchased businesses that support the seniors, where it's everything from wheelchair ramps and, retrofitting bathrooms within the house, for mobility solutions because people want to age in place. So there's just a lot of the
Yeah.
tangential type of businesses to support that as well. So I'd say in a nutshell, the overall theme we're seeing is what are understandable cash flowing businesses that aren't the next trend, the next, fashion forward style, but what are things that are going to continue to do well regardless of the economy.
Yeah. And all of those you were listed. It's funny because I see stuff on that all the time. I get emails all the time about franchising opportunities and I crack up at them because I have an LLC and they'll be like, hey, I think you'd be good for this. And it'll be like cement. And I'm like, I don't know that I care about cement. Now, maybe pets, stuff like that, because I've got pets and I know that's a big because everybody here has pets, right? You were talking the cremation one. And I'm like, that's an intriguing because I know a company here around the corner where we take our dogs for boarding and it's a family owned business where they do pet boarding, but they also do cremation services. They have a cemetery there. And I'm thinking, it's the only one I know in this area that I know that I'm sure there are more that I don't know about. But that's something I'm familiar with. So I could see how that could be a growing area for somebody who is wanting to take that. Not me. I don't want that one.
It's interesting. Everyone approaches us with a different mindset, something I'm passionate about. Like we just had a doctor in Birmingham that bought a sunless tanning. That's kind of the proprietary elements. And it's a recurring revenue type business. Yeah, they're passionate about it. But then I have others, myself included. I actually have a concrete business. We focus more on the asphalt side, asphalt paving and line striping for your parking spaces and wayfinders and parking lots, parking garages. We own all of Minneapolis and St. Paul and do very well with that. So, there are riches in the niches. I've got a business up in New York that provides temporary walls, containment walls around renovation projects and construction sites. That's run by a female.
Hey, you know what? You never know. Like I met a gal in Colorado. Now she has her own business, but she was a former, I want to say, went from like school teacher was working in a construction office and then created her own construction company. And she's doing phenomenal in Colorado, a female construction company owner. So you just never know, which is going to lead me to my next question, because we're talking about all these different opportunities that are out there. I'm sure you have a process for how do we identify, like because obviously you got to find interest, right? Like we got to figure out where these people fit and what's the best fit. So what's the process? You don't have to go into everything, but what does that process look like for you?
Yeah, we try to streamline it for people. So first off, I'll say it's entirely free to work with us. I'm essentially a real estate broker, but for franchises. So we simply get a referral fee on the back end. None of that's passed on to our clients. So it's a nice, clean model. But, of the 600 we work with. So if we start there, these are the franchises that are looking to expand, looking to grow outside of food. I'll get to know Jennifer in Dallas and, she'll reach out and oftentimes she's read our book, Non-Food Franchising. It's kind of gotten some ideas percolating for her. But, I'll better understand her situation, her background, what she's looking to do. I take a lot of notes when I get on these calls. And that gives us a good starting point. And so from there, I would then reach out to the companies that I believe could be a good fit for her based on my experience, based on what I'm seeing in the market. Quickly, that narrows us down from because oftentimes territory is not available. That's our biggest challenge is that good markets like Dallas move incredibly fast. But, so we would start to narrow it down based on her interest, the role she's looking to play in the business, what's available in the market. That brings us down typically to around a dozen or so opportunities. And from there, I would then present those to her. We'd walk through them together. And oftentimes, she'll identify 3 or 4 that seem most intriguing. We'd make those introductions. From there, the franchise brand will take her through a series of calls and presentations. She'll even get to talk to other owners within their system. She can hit pause at any given time. We can always course correct and bring in different opportunities based on what she's learning. But what we found is by getting the conversations going, getting the ball in play, that's where the magic happens. That's where she's going to have her light bulb moment. And, she may turn to her husband and say, I want to go do this, or, hey, this would be great for you to go run with. Oftentimes we do see couples do it together, but then oftentimes we see one of the two also run with it and make it their main thing. Everyone's situation is different.
Yeah, no, and you have to have a process, but I love that you guys are really doing legwork of trying to figure out where to fit people, because there's nothing like getting into a situation where somebody's trying to push you into something, but you don't even really know if that's your fit. I mean, case in point, like it's a different story. But when I was looking at tile in my house and, the difference of having like a contractor come in and then you have somebody that comes in and does an actual presentation, and you get to the end of the presentation and you realize that's not even the tile I want, and they're trying to force you into the sale, So I love that you guys, I know it's a completely different story, but it's still a selling process. It's still trying to get the customer to convert and do something, right? And so I think that it really gets into this whole finding out what the need of the client is and positioning them in the right place so that you have a favorable outcome on both ends.
100%. And we hold their hand through the process, and we've got funding partners we'll bring in, or have a franchise attorney review the agreement for them, or have a recruiter help them find key people. So it's kind of a, end-to-end process. No, I had a client just this past week outside of Dallas that came back and bought an additional youth soccer territory. They'd purchased about 6 months ago, done incredibly well. That's where I get my validation. That's what gets me excited when they refer, their good friends to me. It's all about their success at the end of the day, and that's our success.
Yeah, you can't win if you're not getting everybody else to winning with you. That's for sure. We know that. I love it. So I want to talk about maybe some of because I always say on this show, we're real. I like to talk about the good, the bad, all of the things in business, because I think people listening to this think everything's always perfect. And as you and I know, it's not, because we were just talking about, prior to jumping on here, my hectic December, I think all of us have challenges. So I'd love to know some of the challenges that you find sometimes in, getting this going, like getting somebody going or maybe putting them in the right place. Anything that comes up for you.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts come to mind. We've got a really strong track record of success with our clients, but that doesn't mean that every single client succeeds. And there have been a couple that happen for multiple reasons. Oftentimes, Jennifer, more of the fault on the franchisor side, but the others, I'd say, have been more the franchisee side, and it's their lack of willingness to follow the system. Yeah, I had a business, it was in the property services arena, and I had 10 clients that we placed with this, and most had done very, very well, but we had a client that went out of business. And I called the franchisor and said, "What happened here? Everyone else is doing well." He said, "John, we've done everything we can. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. We've flown into his territory, met with him, tried to help him follow the system. We've coached him. End of the day, he won't follow the system." And so it sounds cliche, but that is so true. When I was a franchisor and I saw all these people running the same business across the country, our top performers were those that followed the system, that humbled themselves and said, "Hey, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room."
Right.
So I'd say that is one piece. I myself had a failure a few years ago. I had a business partner, and we brought in an operating partner to run the business essentially for us. And this was a very confident young guy. And, we probably went with what he said a little too often and didn't validate and check the data ourselves on the back end. Instead, we just took his weekly updates for, face value. And turns out he didn't know as much as he thought he did and was overspending and kind of put us in a hole. And we had to dig out of that. My other partner did not get along after that. So, partnerships can be tough, and you just have to have that accountability and that alignment. The beauty of a franchise system is if you have a good person running that day to day, the franchisor's team on the sideline can really support them and allow you to be semi-absentee or semi-passive. I prefer the term semi-involved because you're still going to be involved. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but franchising does allow for that approach more than just a startup would.
No, this is good. That first part about the willingness to be, I think, to be coached, the mentor part, because the work that I do, I feel like it's the same thing. Like I work with entrepreneurs in a different space. I'm not bringing them into franchise, but a lot of these people, when they come to me, they're trying to build their business, and it's the same thing. It's like, you'll go through and I'll work with them. And I always say, like, somewhere around 5th or 6th week, if they make it there, we have like this coming to Jesus moment where it's like, because I'm direct, I get to the point where I'm like saying the same things over and over. And then I'm like, okay, we're not moving the needle here and you're paying me. So like, we got to figure out, like, are we just not getting this? Or are you just not doing it? And most of the time it's that what you're talking about is not the willingness to actually do what they need to do. There's something there that's blocking them from moving. I don't know what it is. It's either they're too entrepreneurial and they want to beat to their own drum, or they just have something that's freezing them and stopping them from making the step, right? And so a lot of the work I do is to help them kind of get over that, like get through that muck of that's keeping them stuck there. But I feel like so much of that happens. And even when I was building teams, what I noticed is that the people that would do well were like that. They would just kind of follow the system, and meaning that they wouldn't try to reinvent the wheel. They would see what works and they might tweak it a little bit, but they would kind of go. The people that you would say, do this, and they just go off over here and do something else. And you're like, what are you doing? I guess you got to learn. You bump your head, and then you come back to the path and realize you didn't need to take those 10 steps that direction. You could have just went over here. It might have been easier, you know? So I really resonated with that when you said that, but also about partnerships and stuff. And something we learned, like you can hire like an accountant, but learn how to do your own taxes, because you're doing business with somebody. And if you don't know how to do them, you don't even know what to look for. Right. And so if you've at least experienced it, you know what to look for, but then you can delegate that off and get somebody to help you with. So I think there's so many points to what you said on that front.
In the whole tax thing, I've had to move through several CPAs myself because I was the one bringing the ideas to them. I nerd out on that stuff, but that actually is a good transition to a quick thought that I like to mention. With business ownership, for those that are not business owners today, from a tax standpoint, right? I call it the trifecta. You've got the cash flow, you're building an asset that you can sell. It's not just another job, but you're also getting tax benefits. I mean, the tax code was written to favor the business owner, right? Because the government wants to incentivize us to create jobs and such. So there are so many things you can do, from paying your kids in the business. I mean, that's something I do, which allows them to roll it into a Roth IRA. And there's just all these little one-off things that you can do that you can't do as a W-2. So, even if you're able to get something going on the side that allows you to take deductions of expenses of your cell phone, your internet, your home office, and things like that, I would really encourage people to give thought to that aspect, because I think oftentimes people overlook it.
Yeah. And I like the kid part. I used to do that with mine are all big kids now, so none of them want to work for me. Although, funny enough, I was talking about a pet sitting thing the other day with my middle child. She's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do a pet thing, So it's funny because when they were little, when I was running my business, I would get them to do things like count inventory or help me sort things or little things that they could do, and I could pay them and kind of use that. So yes, I agree with you on the tax, that there's a lot of cool things on that front. So would love to know what you love about this work that you get to do, because I can tell you're passionate about it. You know what you're doing. So there's something there. So I'd love to know what it is for you that draws you to this.
Yeah. Again, I spent so many years working for others in the corporate world and had a great run and appreciate that. But gosh, in the past 8 years since working for myself, I just pinch myself literally every day that I get to do what I do. I get to help others. I get to do it on my terms. I get to be creative and develop processes. I mean, it's probably why I love franchising. I'm very process driven. And so I will say I'm the hardest boss I've ever had. I jokingly say that, but it's also true. End of the day, just the stories I hear, the notes I get from clients saying, hey, you've changed my life. Hey, you've given me this freedom. Hey, it hasn't been easy, but it's been so rewarding. And I'm now, I had a client the other day say, I've done all I can on the sales side within the corporate world. He's like, end of the day, I'm capped. He's like, I don't know what my full potential is. I'm capped and kind of handcuffed there. So, I just love seeing people break out, because that's been my story. And I've just seen so many case studies of that. Not everyone's intended to be a business owner. I do think the vast majority of people could be with a little bit of help. And I think they owe it to themselves to at least explore it at some stage of their life.
Yeah, you'll be surprised because, there's like that whole idea, like leaders are made, not born, right? And I think so many times we get hung up on thinking there are certain type of people that should be entrepreneurs. And I think there are people that exhibit leadership, that have stronger leadership skills, but I do think they can be developed. I mean, I've seen people that were this one way and have evolved over time. I think we probably all have. Most of us that have been in the entrepreneur space, we're evolving continually. So I think it's interesting because sometimes I'll meet people in the entrepreneur space and I would have never thought, because I do these interviews, I will ask them, like, what's their background? Like, I studied accounting. True story. And then I got to tax law and I was like, oh, no, we are not doing this. And then I had a guy come on my podcast who ran with Zig Ziglar for 21 years on stage. When he came on, he's like, you did not need to be doing accounting. So you will be amazed, like when I hear these backgrounds for people, like what they were doing previously and how they moved into the entrepreneur space, or they started doing a franchise or something. And you would have just not even seen that coming because they were doing something that was not at that time even close to being entrepreneur. I mean, I guess it could be, but it wasn't,
100%. I'd say close to 90% of our clients end up in a field that was, not only did they not have a background in, but it was an industry that was never on their radar. And so that's so much fun for us. And I love that surprise of, exposing them, despite their background to, hey, we've had doctors and lawyers purchase this type of business, middle managers or existing business owners get involved in something totally outside. They enjoy stretching that intellectual muscle and they say, hey, there's some transferable skill sets that I can bring over here. lean on the franchisor for the industry experience. This is a need I see in the market that I really hadn't thought about, but it's like when you're getting ready to buy a white BMW, all of a sudden you notice all the white BMWs on the road, right? And so it is neat to kind of hold their hand through this evolution process of their thinking, but also just the realization of what can be.
Yeah. And I think too, you get past this whole idea that you studied in this area and that's where you need to be stuck. And you start realizing there are certain things that do really well. It's kind of like, like even when I find this even with people, like I tell them, like, their journeys will go from here to here and they will have started here and they end up here. I mean, I even talk about it in my journey, like here, how the skills have all transferred. They're completely different things, but the pieces have kind of, if you connect the dots, if you were to go from there to there, nothing would make sense. But if you watch the ladder progression, you'll see how the skills, like you're talking about, have been transferable and have landed where people are today, or where I'm, probably you too, all of us, I think, so I think it's interesting. I've met some doctors that have gone into real estate. I mean, completely different, or people that were doing this and ended up into something. I'm like, how did you get into that? Like, what led you to that door? Like, why that? And that's why I love doing this show, because I always want to know, like, what got you to this? And when we're passionate about it, then we are able to convey that over to the people that we're talking to as well.
Totally. And you mentioned real estate. Probably 2/3 of our clients invest in real estate as well. I personally do it too. And I think it's an all of the above strategy. Real
Yeah.
estate, you can do things on the passive income side. Here, you can do things on a little more the active income side, which from your tax days, you probably remember those are two different animals. But,
Yeah.
I do think that it's an all of the above. And we're seeing more and more people with the real estate interest moving over to franchising and business ownership now, because you have very low inventory out there in the market and high interest rates. And there aren't too many good deals to be had in the real estate world at the moment. So a lot of them are saying, where else can I find tax advantaged yield as an alternative investment? So we see them moving over.
Yeah, I love it. So books, tell me about that. You've got a book, you've written multiples. Am I correct?
I've only published one.
Okay.
Proud of it. May publish another one, but it takes a lot of
Gotcha.
work. But yeah,
Gotcha.
very proud of non-food franchising. Came out right at 2 years ago. And would love to share a free digital copy with all of your listeners if they come out to our website. We try to pack as much content as possible within 90 pages and really help people fill in the gaps in their understanding of what's out there from a franchising standpoint, how franchising works, and whether it could be a good path for them.
Yeah, books are, I have written one too. One. And I never said you could do another, and I got the same kind of sentiment I think that you do. Maybe I'm not promising. I don't know. I did it. Yeah. I say you have to do at least everything, within reason, at least once. And then you can decide. I've seen people come in here that have got like multiple, like I'm talking 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm like, how did you like have time to do all that? No.
I'm sure it's easier the second round, but
Yeah.
We're going to let this one run its course. It's still positively impacting people maybe one day. But
Yeah.
no, I'm with you. Try everything once. I went skydiving once, and my son's trying to get me to go again, but I don't think I'm going to say yes at this stage of life.
I haven't done that now. I don't know if I want to do that one now. I don't know. My husband might be with you on that, but I don't know. I tell you, like the Grand Canyon one year, and my husband kind of traveled down in there, and I was like, the whole time was just, I couldn't even walk on the outer edge without my heart just thumping. Like I was like, oh my gosh. So me and heights, I don't know about that one, but I'm a firm believer that if you want to do something and your heart is calling you to do it, and you just feel that drive and it's not bad for you, then you should try it. And book writing is definitely not bad for you.
Amen.
So good stuff. Good stuff. All right. The question I want to ask, what do you feel like you've learned in this process moving from the corporate to, you've said a lot of good things. So I know there's a lot of takeaways in this, but what do you feel like you've learned about yourself in this journey?
I learned what I'm good at and what I'm not good at and what I enjoy doing. The beauty of it is I get to kind of design my days. I work really hard on myself, but I get to design my days and say yes to the things I want to say yes to. And my first journey into entrepreneurship 8 years ago, I had a large team. I had 40 employees and had grown that business. It wasn't highly profitable, and it was not a franchise. And that's part of the reason I appreciate franchises now. I was trying to create a new business model and ended up winding that business down, didn't have a big exit. And it was a tough call at the time, learned a lot of lessons, but also learned about myself that, I don't enjoy leading a large team day in, day out. I spent too much of my time on HR issues and other topics. So many people are so good at that. It just
Right.
wasn't my thing. I love being out there at the tip of the spear, working with clients, working on strategy.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do day in, day out now, and I love it. So, unless you try new things like we just talked about, you don't realize what you're passionate about and that impacts what your daily activities can look like.
That is so good that you said that. I had a gal on the other day that was a federal litigator, like a trade negotiator for the US government, United Nations. Neat lady, but she's also ADHD. You would not even tell because she's not a fast talker, not a, bouncing all over the place. But it was a good conversation because I had two of my kids I had my oldest, my youngest were diagnosed with it, and they were complete different personalities. One was very calm. One was the typical, like all over the place, still is to this day. But it was interesting because we were talking about being interest driven. And she said, typically, she said a lot of entrepreneurs have some of this ADHD and they tend to be interest driven, and which I never thought of it that way. But even in the line of work that I do, it's funny because I've talked about this all the time. I meet people like this, that the work that a lot of us do, we have to do because we're really passionate about, like we're drawn to it. There's something about it we really, really like. You don't have to be ADHD and be interest driven. But she said that a lot of entrepreneurs are, and I think they get overlooked, and this is how they operate, make great, in leadership skills and things like that, because they can make, decisions and all of that. But the big draw in that conversation was this whole interest driven work. And, I find that a lot when I talk to entrepreneurs is when I ask this question, is this passion that's behind it. You meet people that are just doing work because they're just doing it because they think they should do it. But then you meet the people that are passionate about what they're doing. And that's the ones that I get excited about, like, because I can feel it in their voice. I can hear it.
And for me, as that relates, I get to see new business models constantly. I get to have relationships with the franchisors, but I'm meeting new people every day that I'm getting to serve and help and understand their situation, and then help them broaden their horizons and their mind to the fact that others that we've worked with a similar background took that step of faith out, and here's how they're doing now in this type of field. And so love sharing case studies with clients, helping them expand their thinking, giving them the confidence to take a step, if the timing's right. I mean, well, the timing's never right, to start a business, but everyone's situation is a little bit different. And it's just so rewarding to see those. I've got so many stories of people that have stepped out and then they look back and say, gosh, I'm so glad you encouraged me to take what they thought was a risk, but I knew it was a calculated risk.
Yeah, that would be exciting. I always love to hear success stories. So what would you love for anybody, say, maybe somebody's out there right now listening and they're at that considering stage of, maybe I want to be a franchise owner. What would you say to them?
There's no downside to dipping your toe in the water and learning a little bit more. I always encourage people to get off the couch, and I always say, if you start moving to option A or option B, oftentimes option C comes out of left field. So I think just getting in the game, activity breeds activity. So I'd say it's a very easy first step. Just come out to our website, FranBridgeConsulting.com, and download a copy of our book, Non-Food Franchising. And if you'd like to take a next step and book a call, more than happy to chat further. Again, entirely free to work with us. You're not making any commitments of any sort by reaching out. And what we found is, again, the book's a fairly easy read, but helps people kind of get the juices flowing and understand, does it make sense to give this more time?
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. Sometimes just getting things rolling gets the ball moving. And even if it's not that specific idea, sometimes it triggers something else and gets you in the direction you need to be in. It's a process. I think everything that we do is like that, but I think you just sometimes have to step out, make that step. So I like all that. Good stuff. Awesome. Well, this has been great, Jon. I know I could chat with you forever. I've got lots of good stuff there. I like what you're doing. I like the passion behind it, the sincerity. And so thank you for all of your time and your wisdom. We'll make sure when this gets out that we get a link in there so everybody knows where to find your company and find you and all those good stuff. Pick up the book, all of that. So we appreciate you.
Great. Thanks for having me, Jennifer. It's been a pleasure.
Good. All right. To our audience, of course, we appreciate you as well. And if you found this episode informative and inspiring, share, like, subscribe, comment, all of the things so we can keep sharing all these fabulous stories. And as I always say, in order to live the extraordinary, you must start. And every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.